Right. Once again, welcome to our Azure Zero Two Senior Cloud Engineer class, right? Today we are looking into how to administer storage. We're going to look at Azure storage accounts, how to administer storage. So I'm going to go deep a little bit into this and try to explain to you the different things you can do with a storage account, what a storage account is. I will do a small lab to show you what it's all about. And yeah, let's see how it goes. As usual, if you have any questions, just drop it on the chat. Dominic can chime in and just answer the questions if you need me. I can also pause and answer the questions anyhow. So, yeah, moving forward. So, this only the objective is going to be, hey, configure storage accounts, configure blob storage, how to configure storage security, how to configure Azure files. We're going to look at, okay, the first step, say, configure storage accounts. Of course, this carries like 20% of the questions in the AC 104. We're going to explore storage services. We're going to look at storage account times. We're going to look at replication strategies. We're going to look at how to access the storage. We're going to look at storage endpoints. We're going to do a demonstration about the configure storage account, which I will show you guys also. Um, Moving forward, what the storage accounts? So the storage account is basically used to store files. That's the simple way to put it, but of course it's not that simple because there are several ways you can link up it. So the storage account contains of basically four things. It contains what we call a container. A container basically are just blobs. It contains what we call a table, and it contains queues, and it contains files. So that's a storage account. So someone will ask me, hey, how does this translate to S3? When you go to Azure S3, Azure S3 is basically Amazon S3 is basically containers. They're basically Amazon blob service. So what is Azure containers? So whenever you hear containers in Azure, think about HTTPS, think about the web endpoint. So it's basically used to store object storage. It's basically Microsoft object storage solution. That's the Azure containers, right? Azure container is a blob, in other words, Azure blobs. The blob, they are part of the Azure service. They are part of Azure storage service. Another thing there we have Azure storage inside Azure service are Azure tables. Azure tables, those are Azure tables. Azure tables is basically used to store non-relational data, right? It's structured non-relational data. So yeah, how many of us know of SQL? So if you have a small table, you have a small access. In the olden days, this used to be what they call access, Microsoft Access, right? If you are doing a small web application and you want to store the tables there, you want to store your rows and columns there, you can store it using Azure tables. It's very, very possible, right? Then another one is Azure Queues. What is Azure Queues? Azure Queues is basically used for messaging. So when I say messaging, I might get confusing, but let me explain further. So think of it like this now. How many of us have used our phone to buy a recharge card, right? So I'll use the phone to buy a recharge card. You try to buy a recharge card and you pay for a recharge card. Immediately you get debited. Sometimes when you get debited, it's not as the speed you use to get debit, it's just the speed the Microsoft MTN recharge credits you, right? So what happens is that you are instruction is being placed in a queue. So it's being placed in a queue, and that queue. So immediately a bank debits you, you put that instruction on the queue. So when MTN service gets to it, they now credits you. So Microsoft's in a small scale, I'll have to be very critical here. In a small scale, you can use Azure queues to do messaging. You can use Azure queues to handle messaging, to handle that, to handle messaging. So, but it's also part of Azure storage. The next one is Azure files. So if you ever done use file shares on premise, you've ever mounted file shares, you ever had to do things around you ever had to do things around file shares, you have to do things around hierarchy. For example, you created a C drive on your on-premise, you mounted it to a file server, or you are sharing reports. John, I know you remember then the UBA, we used to share reports. You go to a particular file share location and mount it. So this difference with this is that instead of having it on the server, local server, you cannot have it in Azure files. So it uses the same SMB protocol that is being used on premise. So it's actually very, very, very good. So you can mount shares to both cloud devices, you can mount it both on-prem. So you can create a file share and mount it to your local system. You can create a file share and mount it to a server in Azure. You can create a file share to mount it to a to not to a file source, but mount it to an Azure App Service, for example, a Kubernetes cluster, for example. You can create Azure file share and mount to it. Storage account kinds. So when I mean kinds, it's very important you listen to this, right? Storage account, there are different kinds of storage accounts. So for example, now, all storage accounts to determine when it comes to encryption, all storage accounts are encrypted by default. The data address is encrypted by all storage accounts. The next stage is okay, you also come with your own encryption key. That's possible. So for example, now the company I work with here, we're not comfortable with Microsoft holding an encryption key, so we are actually encrypting it with our own encryption key. So that encryption key is actually stored in the key vault. We are using our own key vault to encrypt it. So that means that once the data is at rest, that somebody tries to access it, and that person doesn't have the encryption key, they will not be able to access it. But back to storage account kinds. When it comes to storage account, there are different kinds. That kind can be called queues and everything, but the way you use it is kind. So if you choose a kind of standard general purpose V2, when you get this, you're going to have a blob, you're going to have a file, you're going to have a queue, you're going to have a table, and you have a data lake storage. All this comes with when you see the standard general purpose V2. So if you want a premium blob storage, let's for example now, I'm building an application. Let me use a data-intensive application that stores transactions, right? And it's not transaction, and I'm storing on a file. So if I'm storing on a file, what I'm going to think about is, okay, how do I need this to be fast? I need to be highly available. I need to be fast. If I need to be fast, that means I'm going for something premium. So I can go for premium block storage. So for example, now for premium block storage, for example, now let me use for example, this is around Databricks, Synapse storage. If your application is IOPS intensive, so you can go for premium blobs, right? So just to read out what he said there, he said basically for premium blobs, we're going for high transaction rates or scenario where objects require consistent low storage latency. You want to storage latency. So for example, how many of us have tried to copy how many of us have bought a cheap flash drive in Computer Village before and you try to copy files into it? Notice that it's very slow, right? It's not that it's not 32 gig or 64 gig. It's not that it's not original, but the speed is used to transfer from your laptop probably to that storage account to that flash drive is very slow. So if imagine just think of it as like when my application needs something faster than the default one, which is the standard general V2. If I need something faster because my application is data intensive, right? It needs high performance and it's HTTP based. So I'm going to do what I'm going to go for premium blobs, right? So this is again, is saying, okay, this is coming to a higher level. So notice with premium blobs, there is no file, there is no queue, there is no table, there is no data lake storage. Basically, what you have there is just only blob. For premium file shares, on the other hand, when you have premium file shares, you look at it and say, hey, I'm an enterprise environment, I'm moving it, I have an application that is that I using file share, using SMB protocol, and I want to use it. I want to use it to do I want a higher quality. I want a higher speed IOPS of disk. So I'm going to go for premium file shares. For premium page blobs, another one for high performance page blob scenarios. So page blob scenarios, which be high performance page blob scenarios, you should go for premium page blobs. So again, each one you choose determines is going to be cost intensive, right? It's going to determine how much Microsoft is going to charge you for that product. Replication strategies, very, very important. So, guys, remember when I told you guys when we did VM in Azure Hungary, we basically said, hey, okay, if you want to replicate, if you create a VM, it's being replicated in three. Microsoft, if you create a VM in Azure, what they do is that they create 3 instances of that VM and leave it only on that server. So all those you're accessing one instance, 2 instances are read only. If anything should happen to one instance, it's possible for you to restore on another instance. It's similar to storage. So for storage, if I want a solution whereby, hey, okay, I don't care much about this application. I don't care much about it. I care about this application, but the data, storage data is basically storing logs. So I'm going to leave it to LRS, and people are accessing this basically local replication. Basically, I'm replicating it locally. Replication is local, right? It's local within the data center. I'm not it's outside of the data center or outside of the region. It's basically within a single region. So if I want to go for ZRS, basically I'm replicating to 3 zones, 1 region. So what do I mean by this? For example, now, if let me use, for example, Azure ECS2. If I create a storage account and put it on Azure ECS2, right? Azure ECS2 and choose LRS, what is going to happen that storage account is just going to be on how do I play? That storage account is just going to be on, it's just going to be on one data center in Azure ECS2. It's not going to leave Azure ECS2, it's going to be on one data center. So remember when I mentioned, I said, hey, there are several data centers, and those several data centers make up a region. A region is constitute more than 1 or 2 data centers. But if I choose ZRS, what's going to happen is going to be in that same region, it's going to create replicas in 3 data centers, 3 zones in that region. So this beauty about this protects you against this node rack or zone failures, right? It also synchronizes right to all 3 zones. And that one is GRS. GRS. So GRS, what am I doing? I'm creating 6 replicas on 2 regions. So that means, hey, if I create it on East US2 and my secondary is West Central, is Central, what's going to happen as I'm creating it is going to replicate to those West. It's going to write those West, it's going to write those regions. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to write those regions. And if you look at the second thing, say, hey, 3 per region is going to be written there, right? And also it does asynchronous copy to secondary. That's what it does, right? Next one is GRS plus read access to secondary. So so for example, someone asked me what's the difference between GRS and GRS plus RAGRS. The difference between the two is basically that RAGRS, you have the ability to decide, okay, I can decide I want my application to read from this. So for example, now, if I have a backup, I can say, hey, okay, I want the backup for my application to be reading from a particular data center only, right? I can say, okay, hey, you read from this data center, read from the data center, don't write. So because it and make write to be only from one particular. The difference between these two is that you actually have an endpoint where you can read. That's the difference between these two guys. And that one is GZRS. GZRS is very is another one. Is basically now you're not replicating to just one region, you're replicating to 2 regions, 6 replicas plus 1 zone. So you are replicating to 2 regions and you are storing them, and you're storing them, and you're storing them. And the beauty about it is synchronized to all 3 regions, right? And copy to 1 secondary. So you just synchronous to 3 regions and it copies to 1. That's the difference between them. Then same with RAGRS, GZRS, basically in this case you have a read copy on that one. That's the difference between them. How do you access your storage? You access your storage with what? The endpoint. Sorry, guy.
Yeah, so a quick one here, like let me just quickly do a recap from the storage account, because I think that let me just add up to what you just discussed from the beginning of this course. Basically, a storage account is like a big container in the cloud where you keep your files, and it's similar to having like a Google Drive or Dropbox or name just any type of cloud storage account you have. But in Microsoft Azure, they are top-level containers for all your all your data stored in Azure storage. Like inside the storage account, you can store different type of files. A blob storage stores files like images, videos, documents. A table storage stores like structural data. A queue stores message for applications. Then a file storage stores like a network file share and the like. So a blob storage that you all know, he just discussed or explained, basically is like it stands for the binary large objects. In the simple term, it is just a file storage in Azure. Like I gave you example, it stores pictures, videos, PDF, backup, and the likes. And blob storage are stored inside a container, and which are like folders or any other storage account. So that's what he had just discussed. And he also talked about the kind of storage you can have with, like, you have the premium, you have the standard V2. The standard V2 that we all know is like a common, it is the most common and most cost-effective storage standard that you have. It supports all storage services like blob, files, queues, and tables. And then another one he talked about again is the premium blocks, block blobs, right? The premium blocks is designed for high performance blob storage, like for people, like for high enterprise organization and all. I can use that as well. Then he also talked about the premium file shares and premium page blob storage. All of this which he has discussed. And then a quick analogy here that I would like to just tell you is a standard V2 is regular for storage, is a regular storage for cheap good and for anything for cheap goods for the most simple things that you can store in a drive. A premium block storage are high speed storage for high speed storage like the block blobs, file shares, and page block. So that's just what I want to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about, okay, we've heard about the different storage accounts, the storage file types that fall into storage. Now, next thing is, how do you access it? You access it by using the endpoint. So if you access the endpoints, by basically, when you look at the endpoints under other storage accounts, you can basically choose whether you want to access a queue service, a container, a blob service, to the blob URL, the queue service, to the queue URL, right? To the queue, to the URL, the table service, or the queue service to the URL, a file service. One thing to note something here. Look at it's actually very, very simple. So look at the HTTPS my storage account this .file.port for a file share. HTTPS storage accounts q.core.windows.net, HTTPS my storage account table, HTTPS blob.core.windows.net for blob storage. The one thing to note here, basically, if I can short just point it out, is basically the storage account name has to be unique. It has to be unique. That's one thing to note. The storage account name it has to be unique. It's not something you can, the name needs to be unique across Azure. So for example, now if I have a storage account called Nonso, you cannot create a storage account called Nonso again. It has to be unique across all Azure, right? That's one thing to note. And you can have a custom domain. For example, now, if I have a custom a storage account called, for example, if I'm hosting my website in a container service now called hey HTTPS nonso.blog.core.windows.net, it's also possible. It's very, very possible. Now you can come and do like, okay, hey, nonso.com. Sorry. You can create nonso.com and basically route it to that place. That's just the way to put it. It's very much possible. It's very much possible. So you can create a custom domain that targets your storage accounts, storage endpoints. Storage endpoints talk about how do you secure the storage accounts. Basically, so for example, now if you create a storage account now, you can decide, okay, hey, I want the storage account to be available to everybody in the internet. It's public. That's possible. You also decide, okay, hey, I want storage account to only be available to people within my network. And I can say, hey, I want the storage account to only be available to certain. I can say, okay, I want the account to only be available to certain IP addresses. It's also possible. You can set all that. You can set all that. I'm going to do a lab about this, but I would like to do all the labs together, basically jam everything together. So we'll do. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about we're going to talk about blob storage. So when you can implement blob storage, how to create blob access tiers, what that be, what is lifecycle management in storage accounts, what is object replication, right? How to configure blob storage is also a lab that we're going to look at. Blob storage. Blob storage is a place you can store your files, your pictures, right? That's basically where you store them. You can serve them through HTTP. For example, most of us have downloaded a file through in the internet before. Basically, where we're downloading from a blob storage. say Microsoft Blob Storage, but download it from your Blob Storage. That's what it's all about. So it can store any type of better data. It's basically referred as object storage. So you can send images or document directly on the browser. So how many folks have seen a website and that website has a picture, right? It has a picture, has a website loads a picture, right? That picture is being loaded from a Blob Storage, right? You can use it to stream video, you can stream audio, you can use it for backup, you can use it for restore. That's basically what Blob Storage is all about. So how to create a blob storage, you basically all blob must be inside a container. So if you create a storage account, it comes with a blob, right? But that blob, for you to actually store things inside that blob, you need to create a container. A container like a basket. It's like a bag where you put those things inside here. So for storage account, there's only limited amount of containers. There's no limited number of containers you can create, right? Each container you can create also unlimited blobs, right? You can restrict access. You can say, hey, this blob storage should not be able to access over the internet. It should be only accessible internally only. It's possible. Access tiers. Access tier is something that we need to note, right? That's what we call hot tier, cold tier, and archive tier. What do I mean by this? It sounds like cold double. Let me explain. It's simply on how frequent you access the data. So if you access the data frequently, right? If you access the data frequently, then the access tier is likely is going to be hot. So that means this information here is being accessed all the time. It's hot. Is it a cold tier? Is it a cold tier if it's accessed infrequently? Let's say, for example, you access the data once every 30 days. So, for example, you have files in your blob that you access, maybe end of the month is when you go there to copy those files. That's basically is in cold tier. It's in cold tier when you access it every 90 days. Please note, every 90 days. If you access it every 90 days, then it's in the cold tier, right? The archive tier is basically say, hey, you access it, if at least in 180 days. If you 180 days and above, if you access it every 180 days and above, then to be in archive tier. Please, anyone you choose will determine the cost. There's a cost assigned to it, right? If you access it frequently, there's a cost assigned to it. If you access it every 90 days, there's a link, the cost is lower than when you access it frequently. Lifecycle management. Lifecycle management is basically say, hey, okay, how do you move from these different tiers, right? How do you move from cold, from hot, cold, from cold to cold, from hot to cool, from cool to cold, from cold to archive, right? How do you how what you want to happen now after 180 days, right? For example, now the different industries will have their own requirements. Keep on saying it. Different things will have their own requirements. For example, now for a bank, banks in Nigeria have this thing that you have to keep custom data for 10 years. So that means that you cannot afford to delete. You can say, hey, if this file has not been modified for the last 10 years, then you can delete it, right? You can set all these assets here, you can configure them. It's totally possible. Replication. Replication is basically saying, okay, how do I replicate? How do I replicate to another region? How do I optimize cost? Do I want to do synchronous or do I want to do asynchronous replication, right? Each one you do also, again, there's a cost attached to it. So whether you use LRS, GRS for your replication or blob object replication, anyone you choose, there's a cost attached to them. This is a lab. I want to, before I go to security, I want to quickly show you guys the blob storages. Let's see. Let me bring it up. 1 second. All right. I want to create a simple storage account. Let me create a resource group first. Let me call it storage accounts. Storage, I just call it storage review and create, right? Go to storage, go to this. I'm going to I need blah blah blah. Just need to create a resource. Storage accounts. right? So I want to use a name. Now let me just, for example, show you what I mean is the search account name has to be unique. If I use a name like test now, let me use, for example, if I type tests, see, please contact support. Blah, blah. Let me just refresh. I think something is up, or let me refresh this page. Okay, select this test. Is there any validation now? Let's see. So where is, I don't know what's happening, but let me just start again. With accounts. Okay, so I'm going to choose test. So what it say, test name already taken. So it means that it doesn't matter whether somebody, whether this was created in my team, in my storage account or not, right? In my subscription or not. Once this has been created anywhere in the world, you cannot use this name. The name, so storage account name is globally unique. But if I use test ASD 104, let me see whether it's taken also. It's also taken, right? Let me just add H. Let me see whether that one is free. It looks like this one is available at free now. Okay, so I'm going to choose. Let me just allow it in West US. It doesn't really matter now. It's asking me which type I want. Choose a preferred type. Standard block storage, blah blah blah, or Data Lake Gen 2, Azure block storage, or this Azure files, or this. If I allow this, it's going to choose the standard for me. So I'm going to leave a standard. Am I using GRS? That's not talking about replication now. Am I using GRS? Am I using LRS? I'm going to choose LRS, local redundant storage, because I want it to be in the local. I don't want it to be GRS, because of course GRS means more money. So I'm going to move to the next page. Next. I'm going to go next. So next thing is going to ask me, hey, okay, configure security settings that this. Do I want to require secure transfer for REST APIs? If I want to enable, these are just options. You want to allow anonymous access to containers. I can actually enable this here. So for example, think of it like this now. If I'm going to host the web, if I'm using this to build a website now, the website will host files that people can download. So do I want them to be able to log? Do I want them to log in anytime they want to download, or I just want them to be able to download once they have the URL? So I'm going to leave this one. Just, it doesn't matter really for now, because I'm not doing anything there. I'm not doing anything much here. So the next thing I'm going to do here is basically, the next thing I'm going to look at here is basically say, okay, permit scope of copy operations from any storage account. I can do this one from any, I can say, okay, do I want it from a virtual network? Do I want to enable hierarchical namespace? So if you're doing things around Synapse, if you're doing things around, which other word again, if you're using things around Synapse, if you're doing things around the Databricks, so you can enable hierarchical namespace. Is actually, that's where I've seen people use it a lot. Do I want to enable SFTP, Secure File Transfer Protocol? Do I want to enable it? Do I want to enable it? Do I enable cross-tenant replication? Do I want to enable file share, file system v3, right? Do I want to, okay, the SSTI, is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be cool? Is it going to be cold? What do I want to configure by default? And then network access. Hey, if I say enable now, that means it's available from all networks. I can decide for it to be available, and so I can decide to create a private endpoint. I can decide to, hey, I want this to be available only within Microsoft routing. I can decide this only within Microsoft routing. Let me go next. Sorry. All right, I can enable point-in-time restore for containers. For example, I want my container to be able to, I want to, for example, to basically, hey, I want to be able to restore. If I suffer my container, I want to be able to restore what happened, let me say, last week, right? Point-in-time restore, I can enable it. I can enable soft delete. What soft delete? If someone deletes it, it basically doesn't delete. It stays in your container. It stays in your like recycle bin for 7 days. That's just the way to put it. Do I want to enable soft delete for containers such that containers you can't delete? When you delete containers, it still stores the container. It doesn't delete the container, so the container can be restored. Right. If I want to enable store delete for file shares, right? You want to manage and keep track of changes on your blob. I can enable versioning, can enable job blob feed. But the other things doesn't, you can create the storage and enable all this later. Just to put it like just to put it, you can enable this later. It doesn't mean that you have to enable this today. This is the keys I was telling you guys about. Okay, do I want to manage it by customer key, or I want to use my own key? Right? Do I want to manage it by my own key? I want to use Microsoft managed key. So I'm going to leave it Microsoft managed keys, right? Some organization, like I said, my organization, we don't trust Microsoft to keep the encryption key. We actually keep the encryption keys ourselves. So for this case, I'm going to use Microsoft managed key. I'm going to go to tags. I'm going to go review and create. I'm going to validate this and actually create this. All right, go ahead and create. Created. So let's go and see our storage account. So we can see our container. So these are our storage account, right? You can see that others will enable. Icon namespace is disabled. You can enable this, right? If you enable it and you want to disable it again, it will actually not allow you. So you can only enable it once, right? That's the truth. You can if you enable it, you cannot disable it. Right? That's what Icon namespace. So Icon namespace. Then another thing I want to mention, you got the access tier, the default access tier is hot, right? So let me go ahead and show you the blob service. This is an example of a blob. Like we look at the blobs. This is an example of a blob. Okay, so for example, by default, this is the blob. If I want to create a container inside it, what do I do? What do I do? I need to, if I want to put files inside it, I have to come and do what? I have to come and create a container. So I can create a container calling in also, right? The default is private and anonymous. That's the default. But I can come here and decide, okay, select scopes. I can, okay, and can enable encryption on all blobs. Your Azure account must have versioning turned on. Okay, because I didn't have versioning turned on, that's why all this once access is disabled in storage accounts, right? That's why I'm not able to do this because I disable anonymous storage. That's why I'm not able to make changes on this. But I can create this, for example, now, and this will be my container now. And if I upload an HTML file now, let me use, for example, do I have HTML? I don't have HTML file. Okay, but I can add directory here. I can call my directory. Let me use AC104 class. It will be like a folder, right? I can create folders inside this, right? If you go to Notion now, you can see, oh, where is it? It's up here. What happened? There you go. Okay, I don't know what's happening. Well, let me just upload something. Let me upload a test file. See a test file, blah, 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 easy 104. Let me just load this lab, and if I load it now, right, this is my AC104. And if I go to the storage account now, if I go to so you can see it here. So you can see the file here. Right, you can see the file I uploaded inside here. So that's it, guys. Okay, so back to the storage account, I want to show you something more in terms of security. If I go to networking, right? If I go to networking now, that says this is available on all networks. That means if I share the endpoint now, you guys can access it from anywhere now. So for example, let me share the endpoint now and say, okay, let me see whether okay, but it's private access, so you guys will not be able to access. I didn't enable anonymous access, but you will not be able to access it, right? If I share the settings, let me, for example, now endpoints. This is the endpoints. These are the endpoints. If I want to access this blob storage account, I just need to go to this URL. And if I put it here, it's going to pull me here. Because I disable it, but at least it's showing me this. Right. If I don't, if I have this disabled, right? If I have this disabled now, what is going to happen is what's going to happen is this. If I have this enabled now, you'll be able to actually browse through this. Right. You're able to browse through this. Another option, so just to summarize, right? Summarize. If you want to access your storage accounts, basically these are the endpoints. This is the blob endpoint. This is the file share endpoint. This is the queue endpoint. This is the table endpoint. This is the data lake endpoint, and this is the static website endpoint. So if you host a website inside here, you basically access it through inside the container. You basically access it through this. Okay. Moving forward, I want to show you guys one more thing. Storage actions. Let me see storage actions. Okay. Let me show you actions. I can come to access keys, right? Access keys, what access keys? Access keys is basically saying, okay, hey, if you want a session whereby you want to access, if I want to access this without having the username and password, without logging into AD, right? I can use this key. I can show this key because I'm going to delete this after. I can use this key to access the storage account. It's like it's secret password. So for example, if I want you to access the storage account, I can actually give you this access key and you can access it, right? I can rotate the keys. For example, I can give it to you and can rotate the keys. And another one called shared access signature. Shared access signature is basically saying, okay, hey, I want you to access at a particular time. I want you to access it at a particular time. I want to access it at a particular time. I want to access, I'm giving you access to access it from so to so. And also, what can you do when you have the access keys? When you have the access keys, for example, I want you to access only the blob. If I want to access only the blob, I can just only check this. If I want you to access it, I want to access it only today, for example. Look at the time. Today is 8. I'm going to stop tomorrow. I can set it. I can set it. Right. I can say, okay, should you access it on HTTP only or HTTPS and or HTTPS and HTTP? Right. What's the default? Which key do I want to use to sign in? Do I want to use this key 2 or key 1? Which of them do I want to generate? I can set all these. We can generate what we call a SAS token, right? That's basically what you're going to generate, right? And also, okay, which IP address are you allowed to access it from? So if I want you to allow access it from a particular range of IP address, particular IP address, let me say your home IP addresses, I can actually give you the IP address range to access it from. It's possible. Okay, so going forward. Oh, that's actually what we're going to look into next. We're going to look at next as security strategies. We're going to look at shared access keys, signatures, verify URI and access that's the illustration which we've already done. I'm just going to explain this further. Just going to explain this further. Okay. Moving forward. Right. What's the encryption? What's the authentication with Entra ID and Arba? What is client side encryption, HTTP and HTTPS for the data traffic? What's Azure disk encryption, right? All these things we're going to look into them again. Even though I've explained it, but I'm just going to point again. Shared access signature, just like I explained, it provide delegated access to Azure resource, to a storage account resource. For example, now hey, Helen is not part of my team. I want Helen to be able to. Helen is not part of my team. Is not even part of my company. But me and Helen are working on. We are working on we're working on some files or working on some project. Helen needs to access my project. If Helen needs to access my project, what am I going to do? I'm going to create a shared access signature key and access to her. Give it to Helen. I'm saying, Helen, please give me the IP address of your network. If Helen gives me her IP address, I can actually permit only her IP address to be able to access this. I can't do that. All right. So it helps you to delegate access to storage. So, for example, I can remember when I showed you guys, you can decide, okay, hey, I want to give Helen access to only the blob. I can say I want to give Helen access to the file share. What exactly am I giving Helen access to? I can give Helen access to it. This is an example of what the shared SAS token, shared access key, just access key token looks like. We call it SAS token. This is an example of what it looks like. For example, if you look at here, you can see, hey, the first HTTPS, this is your storage account. Log storage account, right? The next thing after that, this is the next thing after that, you've got this time from when to when, right? That's the 2020, 15, this is with time. Which protocols are allowed, you can say TPS and SVs that's allowed. Then the key is actually the last thing. The way you start from J equals to J0 equals to J is actually where the key starts. So but that's basically how a shared access key looks like. One thing to note, guys, this is like a password. This is a password. To be precise, some companies don't allow this. My company, for example, don't allow this. This is disabled by default in my company. It's not even allowed, right? It's not even allowed. So it's something to note. Encryption is basically what I explained to you again before. Okay, do you want to encrypt using Microsoft managed keys, or do you want to use your own managed keys? For example, some companies, some banks have their own requirements. The requirement to be, hey, we want to encrypt using our own key. Some companies will basically say, hey, we don't want to be the because if you lose that key, you will not be able to access. Without that key, you will not be able to access your storage account. So you need to be very careful about it. So it's very important to note that why might want to choose your manager, your own customer account, you need to be careful of how that key is stored, how that key is managed. And anybody that has access to that key, there's a possibility that person will be able to manage your storage account, that will be able to access the decrypt your storage account. Right. Creating customer access keys, you can create your customer access key in Key Vault, store the key in Key Vault, and basically manage it from there. That's just what I'm going to say about it. Best practice, always use HTTPS to create or distribute your SAS token. So if you don't use that SAS token, but if you have to, always use HTTPS, right? Reference stored access policies where possible. Choose near-term expiration dates on Azure SaaS. For example, if I'm giving you SaaS, I'm not going to give you SaaS for the next 1 year or next 2 years, the next 5 years. I might give you, okay, when do you need to access this file? So you need to access it on Tuesday. Tuesday will be, I think Tuesday will be 11th, right? So I'm going to set the access key to start on 11th and end on 11th. Tuesday 8 a.m. and end by Tuesday 5 p.m. That way, I'm actually following I'm making sure the key expires because anybody that has the access key will be able to access your storage account. Is something to be mindful of. Validate, and when they are after you give somebody access key, the person try to write, you need to validate what access key actually wrote, right? What was written with that access key is something you need to validate. Configure Azure files, or the Azure files. Azure files, basically, you can call and enable sub delete. I think I've explained sub delete in Azure files. You can enable snapshots. All right. You can enable snapshot or the snapshot basically say, hey, okay, I want an instance of my storage account. What is snapshot? For example, let's say, for example, that I'm working on some changes, right? I don't know whether that change is good or not. I don't know the outcome of these changes, but I want to be able to restore back to the previous state. So what do to the previous state? So I'll create a snapshot today, say, okay, so what happened is that for us of today, I'm going to store my storage accounts. I'm going to create a snapshot of what my storage account looks like today. So if by tomorrow there's a changes that happen that I don't like those changes, I don't like what those changes I can actually store back to today successfully. All right. How do you manage file shares? You need to make sure that Port5 is open, right? For Windows, you need to ensure that Port5 it's open, you can mount it, right? You can mount it using, you can use also, you can mount it, you can do the encryption, you can manage it with, you can manage it with, you can manage it with encryption, you can manage it with, you can manage it with, you can manage it with, you can manage it with encryption, you can manage it with, you can manage it with encryption, you can manage it with, by mounting your, so you can manage it with your SAS key, you can manage it with RBAC, you can manage it with any of those two. Snapshot, how do you create snapshots? Basically, go to your file share, basically say, hey, create snapshots. That's basically how you do it. They create snapshot, add a snapshot, basically to save an instance of that story. So in future, if that story corrupt, if that data corrupts, you can basically come and basically just restore from that days. It's very possible. Implement soft delete. I basically told you what soft delete is. Soft delete is this guy say, hey, if someone mistakenly delete this file, I want to have the capability of saying, okay, it's not totally gone. I can go to a recycle bin. I can go to restore and restore this. It's basically when you delete a file from your laptop, right? You know, Facebook's Windows, you delete a file, you know it's not totally gone. It's actually in the recycle bin. Also, what you didn't do should delete, right? So so that's basically what they're doing in Azure because Azure is very tricky, right? It's possible that someone might come. It's possible that someone might come like this and sorry, guys, my thoughts are everywhere. It's possible that someone might make a mistake and deletes file. Do you want to remember delete that file and that file is finally gone? Is that what you want? Or you want to check even though the file is deleted, you can actually restore. You can actually restore. That's basically what Azure file share is. I saw that's what basically soft delete is basically giving you the ability to restore a deleted file. That's what it is, right? So how many days do you want to create it? You can set retention from 1 to 1 to 365 days. That's basically, again, this is not cheap, it costs money. Just to put it like that, because Microsoft is now managing 2 instances of the application. What's the Azure Storage Explorer? What's Azure Storage Explorer? Azure Storage Explorer is basically an installable file that you can use to connect your storage account. So Azure Storage Explorer, you can connect your storage account and view your files locally. It's basically you can install it on your system. You can install it on your system and can view it. That's what Azure Storage Explorer is. Think that's where the class ends today. I've got a good example of a blob storage. What I'm going to do is just going to do one more lab. It's going to go, let's create a file share so we can take questions and see. Another file share, click on file share. I can come out here and create a file share. Let me create a simple file share. File share. I can call it non-so. I'm saying the size to be what 100 terabytes. Okay. So I can say transaction optimize. I can do transaction optimize. It's possible. I can do transaction optimize. I can do auto code. I can just do transaction. Let me just go ahead and create backup. Do I want to back up? Do I want to do any of this? No, I don't want to back up. I'm going to just go ahead and review and create. Creating it. All right. I'm creating this file share. So what I can connect to this file share. If I can connect to it, I can either I can mount it to my system. So if I want to mount it to my system, I can just show a script. Now let me show you guys the script. I can copy the script and run it on my, let me run it on my, let me run it on PowerShell. Run as administrator. Let me see. I can just copy the script here, come to my PowerShell and basically run it. If I run it with PowerShell and run it, let me see. TCP connect 445. Let me see whether it's allowing me to do this. It should allow me, but let me see. almost reachable. So it's not allowing me to do this. Let me see. Why is that? Okay. Persist. CP test succeeded, but it's not allowing me to do that. Why? Let me see. Okay, it should work, but I'm trying to figure out why it's not allowing me. This could be a small network issue. I'll look into this. But I'll actually think I can stop here for today while I'm trying to figure this out. Let me not troubleshoot why everybody's waiting. So guys, any questions? Any comments? Well, the whole class is quiet.
Questions, guys?
Questions, comments? Okay. All right. Um, all right, thank you for today. John is typing. Okay, let me see.
Oh, yeah, no, no. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Eh, Okay, it's about the storage files. Um, is it the storage files we use to storing the like the TF the state files, our state files?
Yes. For Terraform, yes. It's just storage files used to store your state files.
Okay, so if I want to if I want to keep my state files for that long, so that means I have to be paying continuously for my storage
Yeah,
files. Is that what it should be?
but the beauty about storage accounts, you only pay for what you use. You get.
So is it
So you might
what
just
I store
yeah,
or is it what I
what you
retrieve or
use.
what I store?
What you store. For example, now if you store 10 terabytes, right, you're going to pay for 10 terabytes. If you store 10 kilobytes, you're going to charge you for 10 kilobytes. You're only charged for what you use,
So not how long it stays.
not how long it stays. So so for example, you're being charged monthly. So for example, if you are using just because you're renting an apartment, but I'm not charging you for the whole building. I'm charging you for the only your room, right? Just think of it like this. Just think like that. I'm not charging you for the whole apartment. I'm charging you for only a flat, only a room. So, and also the amount of water you use. So, for example, if you rent an apartment for 1 year, I'm going to charge you for 1 year for only my apartment. Not going to charge you for the staircase, right? I'm not going to charge you for the staircase. That's basically what it's about. So any more questions?
Sorry, no, so okay, another one. So can we use just the like app service storage and as an like the app service just have our storage file and just like when you're uploading files, can we just use app service and the storage files? That's all, and it works.
If you want to upload files, you can use only a storage account. You don't even need an app service. So if you just want to upload your files, you can use a storage account only and upload your files. I used to store my files before internet they became a big thing again. I used to store my files freely on the internet on storage accounts. So that way I can move it from VM to VM without complaining, without from resource to resource. Is there any more questions?
I dropped the script on the chat. You can use that script to create a storage account and then create a key for your storage account and then create like a blob storage and then give it a SaaS access just to play around with it in the chat.
Right. All right. Thank you all. See you guys next week.
All right, guys.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you.